All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Generations War for Cybertron Soundwave. Yeah, this is a really cool little figure. This guy was released as part of the 2010 Generations line, along with three other figures that were based on, characters from the War for Cybertron game. They did an Optimus Prime, a Megatron, a Bumblebee, and a Soundwave. I never got the Optimus or the Megatron, but I do have Bumblebee and Soundwave. And yeah, he's a pretty fun figure. I do like this guy quite a bit. He turns into his, kind of weird, like, tusked van Cybertronian car mode from the game. And, it mostly gets the point across. It's not quite exactly the same shape, but it looks pretty good. It rolls nicely. I do really like how they decided to, take this, like, light sort of, like, purple paint and pick up, like, the side here, and then also the bits on the wheel there to really represent like all the glowy bits that the character designs in the games had. I feel like that works pretty well here. And yeah, he comes with a couple weapons. He comes with, of course, his little shoulder launcher, definitely very small here, but it is kind of done in a translucent plastic. At least I think that the top bit is a separate piece that's attached, because this doesn't seem painted, but I'm pretty sure all the blue bits are just painted over the translucent purple. So you can see that like one line in the middle there that gets kind of like the light piping effect. And same thing with his other gun here, which just slides out to become a very wee version of his classic, battery gun. And you can store those in a couple different ways on his vehicle mode. You could just peg them onto the side here to kind of give him, like guns in vehicle mode. But what you can also do is he does have like the chest opening gimmick, but rather than coming with any actual cassette bots, you can just take these and store them inside his chest here, which it works well enough. Obviously, if he came with any other guys, then that wouldn't like really totally work as storage. But since he's just kind of a standalone figure, that it definitely works there. Now, what's kind of interesting is, so they did those four guys as part of War for Cybertron, and then a few years later, they did the Fall of Cybertron figures, and they did a Voyager Soundwave, who is basically just like an upscaled version of this guy, just with like a different sort of like chest mechanism so that he could fit those auto transforming disc like cassette bots in there. So he was very heavily based on the design of this figure. But yeah, so yeah, pretty good looking vehicle mode. You can kind of adjust the tusks here however you want, but this is kind of how I prefer them. But yeah, in terms of comparisons in this mode, just for a standard one, here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe. So you can see what they look like together. Here he is with both the Gamer Edition War for Cybertron / Fall of Cybertron Bumblebee, and also the original one that came out, in 2010 with him. So you can see how he scales with both of them. Obviously, I mean, this says more about Bumblebee than it does him, but he's way too small in comparison to Bumblebee, or Bumblebee's way too big, however you want to say it. But yeah, I feel like even with him, he's a little bit too small compared to him, but that's what they look like together. And then yeah, to get onto transformation, we can just leave the weapons in there. First thing that I like to do is you kind of like put your finger underneath here, and you can push out these like foot panels here, which just become the roof of the car. And then you bring them, and they have this like spring mechanism here where they'll slide to the side and lock into place like that. So it's actually shifting those panels to the side there. And then you can take the entire leg section here, they'll untab from here, just bring it down at the knee, and then take this whole section, and it will double hinge down like this and lock into the torso. Then we can split the legs, rotate the feet around, and then take these panels and just fold them up to make him have a fully flat feet there. And then take these panels with the wheels on them and just rotate them forward so the wheels sit further down on his legs there. And then we can take these panels up here that will just kind of double hinge out like this. These will be the arms, and then it will split down the middle here, revealing the head. Oh, actually, before you would do that, you want to take the wheels here, and they'll hinge to the back, and then they sort of like double hinge back to give him sort of that wheel, back detail that he had in the game. Is obviously not quite as tidy, but it's kind of neat that they, put in effort to actually making an accurate back transformation, since they so rarely do that. And then you take these bits and just kind of fold them down like that to fold them out of the way. It's a little bit clumsy, but it works well enough. And then you can take this whole panel here, split it down the middle, and then rotate it down like this so his shoulders are oriented properly, and then take these panels and they'll just fold to the back of his arms there. Then his hands rotate out like this, and notionally that's how you're supposed to do it, with his arms like this. Like, that's how he looked in the game, with his arms facing this way, but that does give him the annoying gorilla elbows. But thankfully he does have a wrist swivel, so I usually just transform him this way, where to actually like rotate the elbow so it's facing forward. Even if this detail ends up being on the side of the arm rather than the front, I still feel like that's a worthy trade-off. And yeah, there we have War for Cybertron Soundwave in his robot mode. And yeah, all things considered, I think is a pretty good-looking robot mode here. Now, obviously, we can take his weapons out of his chest here, and obviously, if you want to store this, you can just leave it in there. But you can also give it to him in his hand here, and he looks pretty good. And then there's a little hole in his shoulder for the shoulder missile launcher there. And yeah, I feel like that really completes the look there. I feel like he's a pretty decent looking figure. He definitely has some like sort of like skinny bits with like the wheels. I appreciate what they were trying to do here, but it does just end up kind of kibbly, and they do bump into the arms a little bit, which is kind of annoying. Now, you don't actually have to like store them like that if you don't want. They tend to be a little bit more out of the way, I guess, if you store them just on the back like this, but I don't think it really helps the silhouette all that much. It just kind of gives the arms a little bit more clearance there, but I don't know. Up to you. It's definitely not the prettiest solution, but I do appreciate that they were at least trying to like get the wheels in the right place there. Even though they're like stored on the back, which is not something that they usually prioritize. But yeah, in terms of articulation, the head is on a swivel here. It's a nice looking head sculpt, pretty accurate to the game, and a good amount of painted detail in there too. I like how they got the little light purple stuff going on there. Shoulders are on ball joints, which can rotate around like this. He's got this like, sort of like backwards joint here that's used for transformation. And then to go out to the side, you can use, the ball joint goes about that far, and then you can use this transformation joint to go even further. He's got a bicep swivel, pretty deep elbow bend there, which is nice. Wrist swivel, and then they can also bend in and out a little bit. Nothing at the waist, just because of how all that folds up to for transformation. And honestly, there probably could have been, because there's definitely like room for a joint there, but oh well. Hips are on ball joints, which can go forward and back and out to the side. He's got a thigh swivel, a little over 90 degrees of bend at the knee. And the feet are on ball joints, which gives them a little bit of ankle tilt, and then that ankle rotation, then forward and back as well. So pretty decent articulation there. I'm not like totally in love with how his like panel feet look, like with the foot here on top of the panel, but you kind of get used to it. So pretty decent articulation. He could have used a waist swivel, but other than that, he's pretty much up to modern standards for the most part. But yeah, in terms of comparisons in this mode, here he is again with Kingdom Sideswipe. So you can see he's a little bit taller than an average deluxe, but not by a whole lot there. Here he is again with the two different versions of War for Cybertron Bumblebee. You can see, yeah, I mean, they're like, this scale definitely works better between the two of them, but I still feel like Bumblebee should be a little bit smaller in comparison to Soundwave from the game. But this obviously doesn't super work, since Bumblebee is a little bit taller than Soundwave, and just like proportionally his head is bigger, so you can tell that he's like a smaller guy who's just been blown up a little bit. So, doesn't really work, but they still look okay together. And then here he is with Netflix Soundwave, just for another, Soundwave comparison. And yeah, no, he's a fun figure, all things considered. He definitely gets the point across of the Cybertron like Soundwave design. Obviously, these stick out more than they, do in the game, because they really kind of like compress in a sort of impossible way in the game. He's a little bit like skinny with like the stuff sticking off of him, which is not like the best look, but overall he's a pretty fun figure. He's got a pretty decent transformation. It kind of has a good hand feel to it. All of the joints have held up pretty decently well. And yeah, obviously he doesn't come with any like little cassette bot accessories or anything like that, which, you could reasonably find something that could probably fit in there, but it's it's not something that the figure came baked in with anyway. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. A fun toy, and definitely, I think, probably my favorite of like Well, I don't know. I was gonna say he's my favorite one of the original four War for Cybertron designs, but I don't think that's fair because I don't have Optimus or Megatron, and honestly, Bumblebee's a pretty good figure too. He just doesn't really scale with a whole lot, but all four of them seemed like pretty decent figures. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like or consider subscribing to the channel. I do new reviews every Tuesday and Thursday, and without further ado, here we have Transformers Generations War for Cybertron Soundwave.